Hi, Leah. I am so happy to have you on the Everyday Mystic. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So happy to have you. We're going to talk a bit about your journey because I love a good wounded healer story. I don't know if you identify with that archetype, but just having read your content and looked at the work you're putting out there, it seems and appears that that's a pretty strong archetype in your life.
Yes, definitely. And happy
Yeah.
to yeah.
Great. Well, we'll talk a bit about that journey because for me, I think it's really important that others hear when someone's working in the space like you are. You are an intuitive healer. You do work in helping people unlock that healing and also connect to the divine within. And I think it's important for people to hear that it wasn't always the case for you. That this wasn't how you necessarily, maybe you did pop out of the womb this way. I think we all did. But then life happened, right? And so I want to talk a bit about your life and what happened along the way that shaped who you are and led you to this path of doing the work that you do. And then we'll talk a bit about the work and about the help that you bring to humans and to others in the spaces that you reach into. So let's go back and start a little bit with, Leah, before Leah became the intuitive healer and the mystic wise woman who sits before us today. What brought you to this space and what were the history that broke you open into this healer space?
Well, first I'd like to say that the Leah before the healer version was a hot mess. But she was a beautiful hot mess, as I think we all are. And simultaneously there has always been a spiritual knowing within me and a spiritual hunger and connectivity that I claim to be my foothold, my anchor throughout all of this. Meaning I recognized that at a very young age and I felt alone with it and sort of isolated in my spirituality and my practice, but it was something I clung to very dearly. And so that was there. And also I was always very interested in health and wellness. That was there. And as well, I was very interested in media. So all these components were there, but what happened was, like many people, there was a dysfunctional family that wasn't horrible. I'm very grateful to have two wonderful parents still alive and, working and providing and, and a sister. And so we were the average family, I would say. The same year my parents divorced, I was 11, my aunt got murdered and went missing for over a week. And I remember
oh my God,
news trying to locate her. And so that was obviously, a confusing and overwhelming event in my life. And I loved her very much. So that was hard. I would say it's equally as hard as dealing with the own emotions that I was struggling with of the who am I, the not feeling emotionally connected to my mother the way I wanted to, the dealing with my father's, issues. Everyone has issues, even the most wonderful people on a healing path has issues. And for some children, especially sensitive children or empathic children, it's very easy to take on the obligation and responsibility of those issues. So I had already started that way of operating. And so over the years, in my teenage years, dealing with anxiety, then I developed an eating disorder. I was bulimic for several years, off and on. And then when I was 21, I was raped. And that was probably what was the event that really stopped me from doing what I'd been doing, which is just getting through life and struggling and panicking and freaking out and having emotional turmoil. So So that event, the rape, sent me on a journey to understand healing and wellness in a different way. And so I
Mm.
just started education, and I went to specific schools in California on energy medicine and channeling and the mind body connection. I started working at a health food store. I started learning about nutrition and wholeness and meditation and supplement, all of that. So I was probably about 24 when that journey started, the healing journey started. And I'll just remark here, as I think most of us experience, a healing journey is not linear. It is madness. It's just, it's indescribable, quite frankly, and there's no one method. And so I spent years up and down and in and out and at training programs and blacked out drunk on some nights and at missionary jobs the next weekend, and promiscuity here, and trying to learn how to take better care of myself 10 minutes late. It's all of it, it's all of it. And so that's what led me to my work primarily.
Yeah. Do you look at that seminal moment of the rape as somewhat of a gift because it
I think that's
you into
it's hard language to call it a gift because trauma, it's almost disrespects the trauma. But I think every single thing that happens to us provides us with something, it certainly does, or else it wouldn't be. I can't make sense of things that don't provide something. So, and yes, for sure, it provided me with a lot of opportunity. But the truth is, for 2 years after that happened, I was completely shut down, and I wanted to kill myself. And I stopped having a relationship complete with my mother. And I was running around like, a crazy person. So looking at it now, or looking at it 10 years from then, I would say, yes, it was an opportunity for my own growth, but certainly not in the moment.
Right. And that's the beauty of having perspective and being, on the other side of a challenge that you can then look at as an opportunity, a trauma that you can then turn into a healing. And it sounds like you've done such beautiful work in that within yourself to transform or alchemize those moments into the not only healing for yourself, but also you're sharing it with others. And that's, I think, what's so beautiful about the wounded healer archetype is that true healers, I believe, are people who have gone through the fire and they have experienced the depths of loss, pain, trauma, abject terror, fear, etc., and then come out, in some way, through that on the other side. For you, when you took on the healing, and I so relate, by the way, to everything you shared with the path not being linear and the being on the one hand, at a spiritual retreat or, in the midst of all of this healing, but then the next weekend you're getting blackout drunk and it's like you're different people almost.
Right.
I completely relate to that. Went through the exact same or very similar experience within the healing, early days of the healing journey. And like, how would you describe that, that for you, or to others? Maybe you've worked with clients that have also gone through the same thing of, do you see it as you're holding on to this past self, or that it's just difficult to go through the healing? So you're just, continuing patterns. How would you describe that?
Well, I think it's pretty clearly a spiritual emergency, spiritual crisis. I have a different take on the whole past self and like the term of moving out of that crisis or the trauma, and meaning that I envision for myself a moving closer to it. And that's the way for myself that I have healed. It's in the darkness. It's in the embodiment of, it's in the integration of, and the holding space for all the reality which is. That's a hard thing to do. One, for a young person. Two, when the brain is reactive, reactive in any kind of traumatic way. Three, when you're in survival mode. And four, when you just don't have, the support or the skills to do that. So I don't encourage everyone to come right out of trauma and then just run right towards it again, meaning try to face that darkness immediately, because we do need the support and the help and the tools and the clarity and the maturity to do that. But once we have those things in place, which for me, it took 10, 15 years to have those things in place, where I was trying to figure it out and I was trying to let it go, and I was trying to, psycho correct myself out of things and convince myself of something else. And yeah, there was healing happening while I was doing all that and running around to every kind of therapist and healer and modality under the sun. There's definitely, all of it collectively helped give me the support and so forth. And I think that as we come to our own knowing of self and the power and the trust of who we are and what we are connected to, then we have what we need to embrace and really face the dark parts of us. And for me, that's truly what this initiation is, the initiation into the spiritual awakening or the spiritual crisis. And we all seem to have one, or if you haven't yet, I hate to say it, but you probably will,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, I think what we, may have called an existential crisis, or you were talking about the who am I, why am I here, existential crisis, which I absolutely relate to as well, similar age to. And I think, there's something developmental about all of this. Like you were saying, we don't, until we have the resources, the maturity to be able to handle something in its fullness, in its entirety, we are going to be like this in and out, moving in between all of these things. And I think there's partly, we can reason that there's some developmental aspects to us in that way. And then also probably just, life path, right? Some of us, can, we're just on different timings, right? We're moving through things in different ways. And I think that's important to hear for individuals, because it means, your healing path and your journey is not going to be exactly like mine, is not going to be anything like, your child's or your partner's or your friend or your clients. And we all get to have our own experience of it, right? We all get to move through what that looks like.
Right. And just to remember, to allow our humanness, and one can be having amazing downloads and consciousness opening and a spiritual life, and also be experiencing the direct suffering of being human. Those things can happen simultaneously, and we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And so I think while the mind and the consciousness is expanding, that it takes some time for the body and the brain and the emotions and the energetic body to respond and regulate to that knowingness. So I see so many people. I work with one-on-one clients. I still do, not as much as I did, but I do. And I have for 25 years. And the amount of pressure that I've seen thousands of people put themselves under to be better, to fix themselves, to heal, to somehow get over something, to somehow change this or that. You know, it's a tremendous amount of punishment that we put ourselves through. And when I look back at the years when I was really, really struggling, I guess you didn't ask me this question, but what I will say, if I had something to say to that younger version of me, I would say, can you just allow yourself and accept yourself how you are right now? You know, you're doing great. Because she was doing fucking great. She was a hot mess, but she was doing great, you know? And if I had that kind of support for myself instead of the punishment that I continued to put myself through because I was uncomfortable with the pain that I was carrying and I didn't know where to take it, then I probably would have had an even maybe smoother experience through spiritual healing and so forth.
Yes, yes. What a beautiful message, because the acceptance of the now and exactly where you are right now is the way forward. It's like, well, we feel like we need to, like, once we get forward, once we get to that place that we're envisioning out there, then we can accept, you know, in love and be okay. But it's the okayness now that gets us to that place. And it's such a paradox. You know, we get ourselves all spun around in I think confusion of, you know, what that path is, which is why I loved you saying that it's not linear, because if we imagine it that way, that, oh, when I do X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to get to, you know, that final, I've made it to that point. It's like, actually, no, it's when you embody that end point that the X, Y, and Z becomes effortless and easeful and fun and joyful and beautiful and or you just can move through it. You know, maybe it's not all those things yet, but at least you're moving along that path. So tell us more about what your path looked like, your own personal path. And because I know that your personal path really informs your clients' paths, because you share so much for your own personal experience. So tell us more about what that personal path looked like. How is it that you help your body and mind integrate what is awakening in you spiritually?
Well, for many years, I chased my tail, or I chased ideas of how I thought life should be or how I thought I should be. And so I was running, So once I stopped running, and when I say running, I was literally running, not out on the street for a healthy jog, but I moved 48 times. And in my life, I've moved 49 times, I think. So, and I'm only 50 years old, and I didn't move until I was 11, and I haven't moved in 3 years, so there was a lot of moving within a condensed amount of time. So I used to run, and when I stopped running, meaning I kind of just said, I'm going to stay here for a minute, that was a pivotal time for me. When I turned my full focus to the service of others, that was a pivotal time for me, meaning I'd always done media or some kind of body work or healing work or energy work or something throughout all the running, and I loved, and I did feel like I was helping people, but there was a certain point, probably about 18 years ago or 15 years ago, where I started offering free workshops for the community and into the senior centers and, into the Boys and Girls Club and that kind of thing. And I opened my healing center. And so that was a pivotal point for me, because I was kind of within myself and externally claiming the power of the work, where prior to that, I was still maybe testing the work or integrating it and really determining what was fluff and what was impactful and, kind of investigating, if you will. So I think one of our jobs as self-healers is to be very curious and to be like an investigative agent, not just about modalities that can help us to try to get us to a different place, but those included, but also about the deep parts of what do we really believe? What is my spiritual calling? What makes my heart feel open? When do I feel safe? And this exploratory and investigative period of one's life is critical for healing, because otherwise we're just kind of attaching on to someone else's ideology or understanding. I mean, I've had clients come to me, they have no idea what I'm saying because they've never thought for themselves about who they are or what they desire or enjoy. So some of these basic things, I start very practically, very physically oriented, always in healing work. And so I use that, meaning staying grounded, trying to stay physically balanced, balanced in nature, balanced in my personal life, spiritual life, and so forth, as much as possible, so that I could trust myself while I was exploring and trying things and integrating things, to be able to know what was really having an impact, what was helping me. And sometimes breath work helped a lot. Other times it was meaningless to me. Sometimes acupuncture was a lifesaver. Other times, it seemed like a waste of money. So we have to move with the organic, natural flow of our own expansion and contraction and the rhythm of nature and the rhythm of our healing and the rhythm of our consciousness and of the cosmos and everything, ebbing and flowing with it all. And that's why when I say it's not linear, I know a lot of people say that, but when we think about the ebb and flow of life, there's nothing linear about that. You never step in the same river twice. You can't. So I think this really intentional awareness of the physicality, staying balanced and grounded, trusting yourself at least enough to explore, support, and coming to believe what our truths are, outside of anyone else's truths. I lastly just want to say that for me, with that particular incident, with that trauma, the rape, because I know a lot of people have similar traumas, but a lot of us have less defined traumatic experiences in life, that the way that I really started healing from that was when I took my attention off of the event and the human that did that event, that did that to me, and put all of my attention onto myself. So the question was no longer why. The question was, how am I, or what is going on within me? And that was a pivotal time for my own self-responsibility, self-agency, healing trajectory, and all of it. So that's what I would leave with someone who may be struggling right now.
Yeah, it's what I adhere to personally, and also what I share with others too, is exactly what you've said, that the path of self-awareness, the path of spiritual awakening. I mean, we can give it whatever name we want, right? It's this path of coming home to ourselves. Starts with those questions you asked yourself way back when of who am I, right? You begin to have that, and you carry that curiosity into your life to then look, instead of just like, who am I? Tell me who I am, people out there, society out there, my parents, whoever, but to really look within it and to ask yourself that question, and then not stop there, continue to dig and find and realize who you really are. And that to me is such an important key to healing, because if we give our healing over to somebody else, you, for example, right? I mean, I'm sure you don't do it this way, but so many healers out there are, pay me money, I will heal you, right? Healers don't heal other people. They allow the healing to happen in others because they awaken that inner healer in that person. And I know that's how you work, because I can just tell based on everything you've shared so far. If we give over our agency to another, then we are not tapping into exactly what you shared of that, the ability, our own abilities to heal, our own abilities to know ourselves, and then therefore our own abilities to connect to God and to source and to everything that is available for us. So thank you so much for sharing that message. I want to go back a little bit to what you had talked about earlier, or maybe I just read this on your website of you suffered from some addiction. And what I know, and you talked about, spending moments healing, but also moments being blackout drunk. And I can completely relate to that. Do you feel like there is, when you talk about the balancing of, and the, getting into a space within our own body, mind, that we can then do that investigation and do that aligning with self? Did you have to clear some of those habits and some of those behaviors out of your life? And what advice would you give to people along who might be, struggling with some of that?
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, there's again been circling back around to different things. I had to make a conscious choice probably, I think it was like 20 years ago, to not drink alcohol anymore. Now I have like a half a glass of wine once a year or something, and it feels terrible. And I'm drunk and I'm like, headache, the whole thing. So, but I stopped that completely, and coffee, stimulants. I had to really monitor the stimulants because I learned through the curiosity and exploring about my dosha and Ayurvedic healing and medicine. I learned about my temperament, about my astrology, like all of the factors that play in. And when I am just imbalanced with intaking stuff, it's not a good situation for me. Decaf coffee for me is like a gateway drug, seriously, so I have to be careful. But what I know about addiction, what I feel very confident in saying, and whatever kind of addictions that we're dealing with, food addiction, cell phone addiction, smoking, drinking, drugs, sex, gambling, all the addictions. And I speak this for myself, that when they are activated and when we are yearning there is almost always an unresolved emotion that is trying to get our attention, and we are avoiding it, period. And if we don't act on the addiction, we'll often have a response like anxiety. And so when those things come up for me, I mean, sometimes I just go with it, because I'm human and I get super busy, and I've been living overwhelmed in this house, like my whole life. Everyone has their life story, right? And so when I get like that, I'll do something that's not great for myself, like sit down and eat a whole box of cookies or something. And I give myself acceptance and permission to do it, knowing that there's something that needs attention. There's something that needs attention. And maybe I can't give it the attention right now, but maybe I need to schedule time for that attention. Maybe I need to lay on the floor and do some cathartic breath work. Maybe I need an appointment with my therapist. Maybe I need Breema. Maybe I need some kind of something, because it's here again. I know the familiar, that familiar feeling. And it doesn't just come because we have something wrong with us or because we have some imbalance in our brain or something. No, there's something that wants your attention. And we've become masters at ignoring the symptoms and messages that our own selves are giving to us. So, so that's what I encourage, even people that I work with now, and let's say are really struggling with alcohol use. The first thing I say is, first step, can you just pause for a moment before you take the drink? Can you just acknowledge what's going on here, that you're going to intentionally have the drink? Can you accept that about yourself? And can you just maybe get a little curious to see what is going on within you right now that you may not want to feel or think that you're silencing out with the drink? That's it. And then have the drink. We don't need to punish ourselves back and forth and every which way around. So it's tricky stuff, and it's hard. Addiction is hard. I know it's very hard. but as we know, we've seen those heroes that have overcome many things. Mm-hmm. And I think the emotional connection is integral for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently. I have a friend, right? One of my best friends is deeply suffering right now in a place of alcohol addiction with other, of course, I think there's usually a mix of things going on when someone, is suffering in that way. And so there's a mix of things going on with her. And so I've been, she's been on my heart a lot lately, and therefore thinking about, addiction and just, what is it? I remember reading this great summary of an article or a study talking about, addiction really being the response to loneliness, and how loneliness can which seems like, well, aren't we all lonely? Shouldn't we? And yeah, I mean, the prevalence of addiction, like you said, you rattled off a bunch of things. Those are all and can be as destructive as alcohol, heroin, the big ones that we talk about. They can be as destructive in keeping us from our full potential, from our truth, from our, from having the life of our dreams. I mean, it can keep us from all of those things. And on the surface may not seem as bad as being a heroin addict on the streets, mm-hmm. but certainly, if we're talking about human potential, your own potential.
Just staying alive. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. Just staying alive.
So to me, it's like these very basic things of loneliness, these basic needs of being recognized and seen, these basic needs of feeling accepted, right? And loved by your tribe, which was your family. And for most of us, we didn't grow up in tribes. We grew up in just our nuclear family, but to have that, then, that recognition, that attention, that unconditional love, basic stuff that many of us have lived without or grew up without in our modern day, can lead to these addictions and addictive behaviors. And I think it's much, much more common than we talk about. And many more people are suffering.
Right. Well, that's what I mean by the emotions that are trying to surface. Is many of us, and it's my last book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions, is a lot about this. Many of us didn't get our emotional needs met when we were younger, but now we have to step into the reparenting role of parenting ourselves and learning how to comfort and soothe and validate and give ourselves the emotional needs that we have. And yes, loneliness is a huge one. Shame is a huge one. These are the, core wounds that many of us have. We all have some kind of core wound. And so it is our responsibility. And this is why, for me, that we should do our emotional healing work and give much more attention to emotional healing than the society does, So it's very important.
Yeah. So tell us more about your recent book, Overcoming Toxic Emotions. Do you have in there practices and anything that you can share today? Some practical tips from the book?
Well, there's a 3-step method that's super easy and anyone can do, but the book really helps us understand what our emotional and energetic imprints are from our developmental years and what our frequency is based on that, and then how we get addicted to the frequency state of how we feel from our imprints. And that sets the stage for how we view life, how we manifest, what we attract, what we experience, how we feel. And so many people, I know you've heard this a million times, people feel stuck, they feel blocked, they feel like they're not changing their relationship patterns or what have you. And until, from my estimation, of course, there's a lot of different ways to get to the healing path, but from my estimation, until we understand that piece about our feeling state and our vibrational attachment to a certain way of being and feeling comfort there, then it's really hard to shift. So that's what the book is about. And of course, there's chapters in there about self-love and boundaries and inner child healing and that kind of work. But the primary piece is to help people understand what emotional imprints are, what emotional addiction is, what vibrational frequency is, how to establish our baseline, and then take micro steps to heal, to actually shift in a sustainable way.
So what you're saying is that the emotions are maybe unmet emotions can become toxic in our body?
Well, no, unmet emotions can leave us with a certain impression of ourselves, but the imprints are formed just in our developmental years by how we intake everything, but in particular, those difficult, traumatic, yes, but also generalized, difficult or limiting beliefs or senses of shame, or I'm not enough, or I don't belong here, or just a feeling state of being afraid or feeling small or feeling lonely or feeling separate or whatever the emotion is. It leaves us with an imprint of that's who we are in relationship to ourselves and to the world. But we know that that's not true, but we have to work with the subconscious and the psyche and the energy body for certain to elevate that imprint, that vibrational frequency, and detach from that belief. So that's kind of what it's all about.
Sounds incredible. I just listened to a podcast interview with a therapist who has written a book called Addicted to Drama, I think is the title of it. And he's talking all about being, and he lived through it. He's a therapist who, just like so many, right, of wounded healers, he's lived through it. He was this, histrionic, drama queen, he called himself, and was addicted to the chaos of that, the feeling, that toxic emotion, just like you're talking about. And it's just so fascinating that just another example, I guess, of how we can be in our own way.
Yes.
We think that this is potentially just who we are. But when we start to really peel away those behaviors as, those are constructs, those are coping mechanisms, those are just things that have built up because I haven't dealt with these things in my life, we get to really meet ourselves.
Yeah. It's important to know, I think, it's not our fault, but it's our responsibility. So we are in our own way, but we also have the power to get out of our way.
That's the beautiful thing, right? The real beautiful thing that comes from that responsibility you take on. It's just like, and I love, you said it earlier about how we manifest, these negative things in our lives. And so I love that you said that, because so many people talk about manifestation as, this powerful woo-woo thing that, if I think positively and attract my dream job, husband, house, whatever, and think it's so unattainable that we are manifesting these dreamy things we want, but aren't really seeing that they're manifesting their current state.
Right.
Right. As well.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that, about the power of our minds and our energetic body to manifest in general.
Yeah. I love manifestation. I think it's the most natural thing in the world. And I think it's just all about harmonizing our honest, authentic belief state with what we want or desire in our lives, And so it's not a hard thing to do. It's just the hard part is the emotional healing work and the self-healing work to be at a certain frequency that determines the getting of that thing or experience or whatever. So it can be as easy as a thought, really. If I'm energetically aligned with, I don't know, give me whatever the example is, then I just have to have a thought and a desire about that, and then I will experience that. In fact, I already have, because I've had the thought and the desire about it. So depending on what your belief is about time and how we, experience this life that we're in, I think it kind of all happens at one time. But if we have an authentic knowingness and a vibration that matches the same of the other, how can it not be? It does, it just is. And so it's not, people talk about manifestation as if it's some skill or like they're, I mean, sometimes I joke and say I'm good at it, but I know where I am and I know what is possible for where I am. And so then I say yes, and I'm attracted to those things that are possible for where I am. And then therefore I get it. But if a person doesn't know where they are and they think it's some kind of magic, or they think it's, some skill that they have to get better at, that's just coming from the ego state that's ruling the judgmental mind, saying that you're different from that. We're not different from anything in the sense of we're all connected to source, but we are vibrationally different depending on our belief system and our emotional frequency that we're charged with. So that's the key to me.
Yeah. And like you said, taking the responsibility for your life, your condition, and what it is that you want to step into and how you want to live and what you want to heal and what you want to face. Taking that responsibility on is, I think, a key to understanding that we have and that we already are manifesting. We are manifesting our current reality. Even if you don't think you are, you are. So all of the shit you might be pulling in, you're pulling that in because of where you are in your, like you said, in your emotional and energetic states. So we are that powerful, even when we don't know we're that powerful. I believe we are. It's until we understand and realize that we're that powerful that we get to use it, we get to wield it in the way we want.
Yeah, well, I do want to be careful here too, though, because the language, I think it can be construed that then we can create anything that we want. And I don't think that that's realistic. We are humans in a form here amongst millions of other people in nature. And the truth is that suffering happens and bad things do happen. That doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you manifested the bad things. We all experience a mixture of negative things and positive things. It is the polarity of life. We are not here to only experience positive, beautiful things. Now, we can have a mindset and a framework that spins the negative things into whatever we want to call it, as long as we're not doing that in a toxic way. Okay. But none of us can escape life. And so do I sit around just manifesting everything like that's perfect for me? No, I've got a lot of other things to do. And do I have hard, difficult, bad things happen? Of course I do. Sometimes they are aligned with challenging feelings and thoughts I'm having. Like I've jammed my finger in the door. It's like having a crappy day. But other times, it's the nature of life that has so little to do with me. And I think that's, for me, spiritually, that's a big part to keep in check here. We have made everything to be about us. And what am I getting? And how am I feeling? And how good do I look? And what do people think of me? And why did they cut me off? And we take everything so personal. But life isn't just about you or me, And if I don't take it personal and I just step back and notice it as an observer, the same way we try to practice in meditation, and not take it personally, then I don't suffer as much because it doesn't have direct definition of who I am. So is it bad that happened? I don't know. Is it? Only if I say it's bad. It's what happened. Is it good what happened? I don't know. Is it? If I call it good, it will be good. So when we're thinking about manifestation, I think it's important to differentiate between this, like we are co-creating our lives because we are always in a state of activity. And if you call that manifestation, yes, we're always doing that. We create our reality. And we're also out of control a lot of times, and stuff happens that has absolutely nothing to do with me. And if I don't need it to have something to do with me, then I'm free from suffering from it. So,
Yeah, beautiful perspective
Mm.
to be the witness.
Yes.
And yeah, and just allow non-value judgments to rule you, I
Right.
guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately, yes.
hmm You have a beautiful podcast called the Modern Sage podcast, right? How long have you been doing that?
About almost 2 years now, I think. Yeah. It's been consistent, but not like a weekly consistency. It's been, weekly, bi-weekly, so forth.
Mm. What do you get out of those conversations? I mean, as far as a podcast host to podcast host, what is it? Why did you want to start that?
Well, I've always been in the media somehow, and I was feeling, I think at the time I was feeling too tired to do more television and frustrated that I didn't have an outlet. And, it was probably feeling influenced by other people, all the people doing a podcast. But I did feel like it was a really great way to have my own control over conversations and just the format and that kind of thing. And so I started doing it and enjoyed it a lot, and I still do. It's kind of morphed and changed over the time. And I think of it as just an offering. That's what I think of it as. Yeah.
Yeah. Same.
It's challenging. As you know, it's a lot. It's time consuming. You have to do it. You have to schedule it. You have to edit it. You have to put promotional clips up. It's a lot to do. So kudos to you.
Yeah. Big service out there. And I, to me, it's just a fun, creative project as well, to just allow it to be what it is and then become what it is. And I get to, shape it in the way I want to. And yes, it's just I don't have a lot of creative things in my life, I guess, and I feel like I am a creative person, and, I'm creating life, creating, even businesses and all of that, like creating for sure. But this was the first time that I've had something that I feel is completely a reflection of me, and getting to create that feels really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. Good for you. It is.
So yeah. And so aside from the podcast, you said you're still seeing one-on-one clients. And what else are you doing? You're writing books. And how else can people connect to you and learn more about you and interact with you?
Oh, yeah. So I have several courses on Daily Om. I teach every other week on Insight Timer, obviously social media, which is at Leah Guy Live. And I do some corporate speaking or keynote speaking and inspirational workshops, retreats. All of it's on my website, usually a month or two in advance. So that's leahguy.com. People can find me there. And I'm working on a new project right now. It's not a book yet, but it's going to be another type of medium, and maybe the book soon after.
Exciting.
Yeah.
You have written 3 books already, and we just talked about one of them, Overcoming Toxic Emotions. What are the other 2?
The other 2 are The Fearless Path and Spiritual Journal for Women. It's really for anybody, but the publisher wanted it to be for women. So, The Fearless Path was my first, and Spiritual Journal, which is like a 5-month work through journal, and then Overcoming Toxic Emotions is the 3rd.
Yeah. And do you feel like the writing of them are almost like reflections or timestamps of where you were in your life?
Yeah, sort of.
At the time?
Yeah, I didn't set out to write a book, and so that wasn't part of a plan, and it just kind of came out. And I guess, I would say when I was, especially the first one, it was kind of to help people understand energy, chakras, symptoms, physical and emotional symptoms of their blocked or stuck feeling energy, or their core wound pattern that's showing up in meditations. So I kind of wrote them to satisfy a lot of the same questions I was getting at at the retreats and the workshops and with clients and so forth. And I thought maybe I should just compile this. So, people have access to that. So that's how that one came about. And then the next couple just came out.
Yeah. It's like listening to the needs, the group consciousness. It's obviously something's in the air. It's there, and you grabbed it and put it down. I'm excited to send people to your site to go and check out your books and your courses. What's next for you? You have this project on the horizon. Do you see yourself continuing down this path of this work? And do you have anything, kind of like 5 years from now, Leah, what you'll be? I know it's hard to predict, and I don't imagine you have a prediction, but is this the work? Is this, where you see yourself kind of moving into the rest of your life with?
Yeah. Well, I think like everyone, I'm always evolving and expanding, and I know this has always been my work and it will always be my work, and it is also my passion. But I am an artist, so I think that it will continue to be displayed and shared in a variety of ways. So I'm excited about that, because I don't like the day in, day out, everything's looking the same or me doing the same. I like a healthy routine, but I am an artist. So I think of my life kind of in chapters, and I do feel like I'm starting a transition chapter now. So the next few years will probably look quite different than the last few years have. And it's exciting, but I'm not sure exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I've been saying that recently because I turn 50 next month. And I was talking about how I feel like it's not just a chapter, but it's like a volume of my life is closing and a new volume is opening. It's that epic. So I know you must can feel me, sister, being of this mid right in the center of this century and having this turn. It feels really epic.
Yeah. I went through the 50 last year. And so I can totally understand. And it's beautiful. Like, it's, I was really excited about it in a way, and I still am. So yeah, it's just, I love how life reveals itself and how we grow into it and everything. I just think it's amazing.
Well, I can't wait to continue following your unfolding and everything that you're doing and sharing with the world. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yay, yay, yay.